buyer's market, so people are going to be a lot more thoughtful and in terms of who they're keeping and what the value that person brings to the organization, and if they're going to bring anybody else on board, if they're fortunate enough to be in that position, they're going to be, probably a lot more cautious on what that looks like, and more aligned to what the company's goals look like. So that's a high-level answer there. Any specific follow-ons or more thoughts on there?
I don't see any questions yet. So let's just keep on. You had a whole lot of good things to say about this yesterday, so you just keep chatting while these shy people come up with their questions.
Okay. Well, I'll go with one of the questions that, let me put this on. Mark Gunzik, I think that's how I pronounce your name. So here's the question. For those looking to move into pre-sales, what types of non-sales engineer, sales consultant roles bode well for a transition into pre-sales? And then suggestions would be implementation, customer success, etc. The tough part about breaking into pre-sales seems to be that all roles require 3 to 5 years of experience. So what are the alternative routes to wiggle into the position? So yeah, Mark, a lot of good, sort of or ideas around that. So, the suggestions that you have in terms of if you're looking to transition into pre-sales, if you're not in pre-sales today, this market's going to be tougher to crack that, because customers are really looking, or employers are looking for, okay, who can add value as soon as possible. And so the obvious, the lowest risk alternative is somebody who's doing the job today. But if you're running it in an organization that's going to be looking to add to this team, then how do you position yourself? So one of the biggest things is, are you in a customer-facing type of role? And have you demonstrated that you can influence decisions or influence opinions? What Eileen touched about was what we talked about yesterday, is like influencing a decision is really what a big part of what a pre-sales person does. So whether it's been as an implementation person where you've guided an organization through a process of taking on a new product and solution, or whether you've been in support where you've been helping people work through challenging problems and give them solutions. Those are the types of roles which will give you the experience and appreciation for the challenges customers face. And you will have developed the skills where you're dealing with challenging situations. So you'll have developed high EQ, you'll have developed the ability to be, assess the political landscape or situation with an individual. And those are things that are very, very valuable. One of the, if I could walk back a bit, so you talked about, let's see, the question goes again, how do you bode well for a transition? Okay, so I guess there are two aspects to this. One is, if you're looking to join a company as a pre-sales person, and you're not a pre-sales person today, I'm just going to tell you that could be really, really challenging, because that's an awful lot of risk on the part of the organization. So you'd have to have things that were so compelling that they would be willing to take on that risk. So whether that's subject matter expert, maybe it's an accounting firm and you're a CA. Maybe it's a manufacturing product and this is what you've done for the last 15 years, you're a manufacturing expert. So those would be things that would be compelling. But if you're not, if you're not in that role, one way that's really effective, way I've seen, is if within your organization, if you demonstrated to the person who leads the organization responsible for pre-sales, if they know of you or have seen the work that you've done, then this would be a really good time to start letting that person know what your career aspirations are, and maybe even taking them on as a mentor and talking to them and saying, listen, I'm sure perhaps you're not looking at doing anything today, but here's what I would love to do. First of all, ask them, candidly, do you think I'm that person? And, and be prepared for an answer which you may not like. But if they say, you know what, you've got potential, but here are the things that you would need to do, and here's what I see on people that I bring on my team, that then becomes a pathway for you to start focusing on things that you're going to want to do to put yourself in a position where perhaps the opportunity isn't there today or the role isn't approved, but you would then be on that person's radar screen, and they'd be seeing the kind of efforts that you'd be doing to demonstrate to them that that's how, your initiative and how keen you were on that, and they could help guide you that. And so when the opportunity opened up or when they got budget, you're going to be in position that you're going to have, you're going to be part of that decision. You're going to be considered for that role. So 2 ways,
Martyn?
one internal, yes.
No, go ahead. I thought you were finished there. Go ahead.
So one's internal, and then so I'll just go to another way as well, which is, example I talked a little bit about yesterday is that, when and it doesn't really matter when if you're looking to make a change, you want to use every source, every opportunity, every connection there is. So, whether it's people that you know through LinkedIn, whether it's people you know through work, you want to tap into everybody like that and let them know your situation and what your interests are. And you also want to reach out to select recruiters who are plugged into that market, would take the time to understand what you've done, what your skills are, and then position you to opportunities that you may not know about or may not even be aware. So many of the roles that we get are not advertised, and the client calls us up. We've worked with them before. They don't really want to, they don't want to post it for a number of reasons, and they want us to go into the marketplace and find the right person. And years ago, I placed an individual who was not a pre-sales person. They were more of an implementation person, but they were very, very smart and really good client-facing skills. They actually really wanted to get into sales, but I talked to them about that, and that may not be likely, but there would be an opportunity to, as a transition step, or what do they think about working into pre-sales? I introduced them to the clients. Initially, the client said, I need somebody with experience. I vouched for the person. I said, listen, this person's really great. You should meet them. They did. They hired the person. They went in there, demonstrated, over a 2 to 3 year period that how committed they were to being successful, and then subsequently they were promoted, and then they built out a team, 10, 15 pre-sales people globally. So they were not in a direct route. They weren't in a pre-sales role, but they evolved their career to that, and then because they demonstrated they had great leadership skills, and the company was growing so quickly at the time, different marketplace, but at that time they were growing really significantly. They became they were the obvious person to head up that team. So maybe some
Martyn,
questions or follow-ons, Aileen? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I had a comment on it. I have a question for you, and first I have a comment on people entering it. So as a person who hired pre-sales people for years, there were some things that I looked for. And sometimes it's easier to take somebody who's done the job before, and then still, I never hired anybody without them doing a presentation during the interview. But
yeah,
sometimes companies think they want to hire industry, and they will value that over the skills that go with pre-sales. And I have seen that be absolutely terrible. But I have hired people from pre-sales. And the way I did it was partly what Martyn touched on, which is, what did you do during that? So if I'm hiring into healthcare, I think it's great that you were in nursing, but did you ever have to do a presentation to somebody scary, as in higher up? Because when we're doing our pre-sales jobs, we have to demo and present to C-levels and people like that. So did you present to somebody who was scary to you, so higher in the hierarchy usually, and did you have to persuade them? Martyn touched on that as well. So Martyn, I have a question. When people have been talking to me lately about their careers, I tell them, you have to prove that you can do what you say you can do. So whether I've had people in a company wanting to get into pre-sales, I've spoken to a couple of people who are not in pre-sales and want to get into it, or just want to expand their jobs. So my question to you is, I do think using a recruiter is a good idea. That's why I asked you to help. But I tell people, put a video of yourself on LinkedIn. The recruiters and the hiring people will look at LinkedIn. Is there any value in doing that sort of thing? Do you look there at all?
Personally, no. I don't know that. I'd have to ask my recruiters if they've experienced that. So I haven't seen it. Now, do I think it's a great idea? If in a role like this, if you've got great presentation skills and you can tell a story, absolutely. And in fact, just doing it might impress the viewer because they're thinking, wow, this person's got courage, and most people don't. But you would probably want to do that and look at it many, many, many times, and then ask people who you trust with, and that you're not going to get offended, because I see. So on LinkedIn, I see many people doing they've got videos. Very, very few are what I would call compelling, or I even want to look at them. And I'm just going to call it out for, my gender. Most guys look, not happy. They look borderline angry. They are not drawing me in. So I'm going to call out somebody that works for me, Heidi Ram, and go to her website, go to her LinkedIn, and if you want to see videos, which she does, periodically, they're compelling. And part of it is because you need to entertain somewhat. It's not just pure factual. Here's my message. No, that you have to draw the person in, and they have to go, wow, they have to enjoy what they're watching as much as getting the content. So if you want to, she gets many, many comments about that. Not only the content, which sometimes she calls things out, and sometimes she's a little bit controversial. So I guess at a high level, absolutely, but get somebody who isn't just your biggest booster to tell you, what they like, what they didn't like, and where you could change. Kind of like if you're doing I'm sure you've done this, Aileen. So, but I don't know, about a year ago, we were putting on a morning show about different area of the world or different product. And I remember I had my 1-2 minute intro. So I bounced it off the person that I trusted, and the feedback was not great. I mean, I thought it was great, but they said, no one's going to want to hear this. So I was forced to, not forced, but I was motivated to go completely redo it. And then it was an entirely different approach. And I said, okay, that's hard, but that's going to be much more interesting. Right? Yeah. So
I agree. I think you need to make sure that they're good. And I have looked at least one of Heidi's videos, and here's the balancing act there. It doesn't have to be the kind of video that looks like a commercial, like an ad, but it does have to have, they have to be able to see your face. And if you can't tell a story, and if you can't be conversational, you're not going to do well in an interview presentation either. So you might as well work it out. But Heidi's are very nice. She speaks nicely, but she's standing in an office. She's talking casually, but making a good point. If pre-sales people can't do that, or if you can't do that, maybe you're not ready for pre-sales. So I hear all the time, you'll see people talking about doing videos and saying, just do it. Just go ahead and do it. And I think you have to balance somewhere between that and doing a TV commercial. You don't want to have to do a TV commercial. You don't want to just do it. If the lighting is rotten, if you don't know what you're going to say, if you're reading from a script, all the things that a good pre-sales person should know better anyway. And if you're even doing a real demo, not just this, there certainly should be dry runs, and they should be with people who don't think that you're the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. Because I have seen Mark Benioff, one of the biggest CEOs in the tech world, getting ready for one of his customer things, he has 9,000 people online giving him feedback all over the world. And I watched him do that, and I was thinking, holy mackerel, wouldn't you think his ego would be too big for that? And I hear the same thing about Steve Jobs when he was getting ready for his as well. So I do, as a pre-sales hiring person, I absolutely think if you can prove that you are good at doing one of the big things that happens in the job, you should do it. But do a good job, you know. You don't have to be perfect to be great, but you do have to be better than bad.
Think Rick Mercer.
Yeah, yes.
No, I mean, he's compelling.
Yes, absolutely. Look at him. And he's outside, he's walking around. Absolutely, yeah.
Yep, yeah. That's when I look at Heidi's, that's what I think to an extent is sort of influenced a bit by that. But yeah, it draws you in, and yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Another thing, Martyn, is as you were talking, you know, we were talking about the state of the pre-sales world at the moment, and things are a little bit troubled. I had somebody on LinkedIn challenge me on that concept, and so I just want to double check before we leave the state of the current world, which is he thinks that pre-sales people are so valued that they are almost an essential service. And I am saying that unfortunately we aren't as valued as we probably should be. And I was reading messages, so I didn't get it all, but did you comment on the fact that some companies will turn to product and education people?
Yeah, I mean, every company is going to be different, and everybody's going to make a decision based on their situation, the talent that they've got. You know, I mean, we're at the very beginning of this. What did this all like really start to not fall apart, but you know, the early March, middle of March is when we started to see layoffs. Some companies have really got ahead of it. Sometimes they may, you know, depending on how things go, they may have to make more changes through the rest of the year. So, you know, the function of guiding a customer through making an informed decision on a complicated, you know, solution, which is at a very high level, what pre-sales does is to be necessary, sure, essentially, yes, but, you know, at the end of the day, it all falls apart. The CEO can do that because they're the one that had the vision of what the solution did in the first place. Also, your chief product officer, if you've got one, or anybody who's great in product. So there are a lot of companies will have lots of options besides, oh, well, we have to keep that person because they're the only one that can do it. I mean, you know, so, you know, nothing's guaranteed in life. You just want to be as valuable as possible. And taking the position, well, I'm this, and so you can't live without me, could be, you know, you could misjudge that and, you know, be on the wrong end of things. So, you know, 2002 was when there was a huge sort of reduction in many companies. Lots of companies went out of business because they didn't have really a business model. They got a lot of venture money, and then nobody really wanted what they had, or they didn't even really have anything. And what we saw for a long time was that, yeah, the most personable product person became the pre-sales person. And it wasn't until the market picked up considerably that we saw a substantial uptick in pre-sales roles. Okay. So, like, I don't know how this is all going to unfold, but, you know, best advice I can give is make sure that what you're doing is really valuable and you know, indispensable to the company in the owner's eyes, not yours, and always be looking for other ways to demonstrate value, and don't be shy about sharing that with the person that determines whether you have the job there or not.
So, Martyn, so some of the people that I talk to are perfectly secure. I mean, there are companies in the tech world that haven't seen much of a downturn. I find that was more true in March than it was in April. All of a sudden, people's jobs aren't as busy. There aren't as many demos being done. There's not as much to do. Is there, the things that you've talked about, are they good if you're not ready to look for another job, you're just worried about it? Should they be contacting recruiters just in case? Should they, is there any advice in that area? Because they haven't lost their jobs. They're not looking for another job, but maybe they're worried they're going to have to.
You know, recruiters reach out to people that are, you know, we'll call people and they'll go, I don't know why you're calling me. I'm happy. I'm doing great. What do we say to that? That's why we're calling you, because you are happy, because you are doing great. And so that means you're going to evaluate any opportunity from a position of strength as opposed to a position of like, oh, I have to get something. So, you know, I think anytime it makes sense to have other options. Now, you know, and what are options? Options are exactly that. You could choose to exercise them or not. If it turns out something is going to be a lot better than where you are, okay, then maybe that's something to go down the path. Now, overlaid with that is if you're doing really well and your company is doing really well and they're not affected by this at all, which I think I'd be hard-pressed to find a single company that I know of that is exactly in that, there's going to be a certain sense of loyalty where you're working. And so if you've been doing a great job for quite a while, then it's going to be a really difficult decision for them to let you go. So whereas if you jump to somewhere else, and because it's the shiny object and it looks really great, but all of a sudden things change in their world. So perhaps they were, you know, perhaps they thought they were going to get $25 million, but, you know, the money hadn't hit the bank yet. Or perhaps they thought that Citibank was going to sign up for a, you know, $7 million deal, and all of a sudden that got pulled. If they have to make changes, you know, last in, first out is frequently how things end up working. So always, I think it's a smart idea to have options. Whether you choose to go down that path is every situation's, you know, specific, and you'd have to be really cautious about whether it made sense or not.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense. Plus, you know, if you're worried about losing your job, it just makes you feel more secure to think that you're managing your own life and that you have options. And then you don't act out of fear, which is what we do when we take the wrong job.
Yeah.
So that's about getting into pre-sales and handling this. You have spoken about and written about the ways to move forward in your pre-sales career. And that right now might be because you want to, or it might be because you think I better find something else to do in this company. And the normal is, oh, I must become a pre-sales manager. And even more normal is, oh, I must go into sales.
Yes.
I know that you think there are others. Tell me what you think about all that.
Yeah, those are the obvious routes. So, and they, you know, they can be great pathways. Again, you have to ask yourself, do I really want to personally own the number? Because really that's what sales is. And is that life and everything that goes with it what I really want? But, you know, everybody's going to make their own choices there. You know, do I want to get into management and deal with everybody else's headaches? Okay, well, that's, and have ultimate accountability above that role. Again, that's another thing. So the person that I referenced who moved into a pre-sales leadership role actually recently moved into a product leadership role. So, and that's a fairly, you know, that's a not obvious necessarily, but it makes a lot of sense because this person had spent the last 8 years talking to customers globally about their business and the product that this company was building and how it addressed that. And so he would have been very informed in terms of the direction of the marketplace and the business, and would be, so that he became I could see really well why that would be a great career move for somebody, or how they would be perceived as extremely valuable to move into that role. The other area that's obvious would be in client implementation or consulting. And these would, again, client facing, you know, the business issues. That's within the organization that you're staying. If you want to look externally, well, if you have a lot of strength on a specific subject, then consulting firms would potentially be very interested in you. So, you know, IT consulting firms, or depending on what level you're at, strategy consulting firms. And then oftentimes you see people go back into industry because there's actually a certain cachet in the world of industry, getting somebody from a vendor who must have seen so many different ways that other industries, our competitors, did. Boy, wouldn't it be great if we could get that person their experience and bring them in here? So those are that's what I've seen in terms of what people could do and what, you know, what the options look like.
Okay, I'd like to just throw out something there that I have done, that I've worked with a number of people on, and they have found this really useful. So this is a career call. So there must be people on here who want to change a career as well as holding on to their career. And if you're wondering, should I stay in pre-sales, should I get into it? Or if I want to move out, should I go to management, should I go to sales? I would like to recommend that you do the value, joy, profit analysis. And so I have seen it done as a triangle. If you're looking for the concepts on, like if you're Googling it, you'll find it under career circles. So if you were to go through, where do I provide value? What am I good at? And every single good thing that you could possibly do. Somebody that I think is still on the call did that with me, and she just said, I'm good at pre-sales. Well, there were like 20 things that we could drop out of that. I add value because I have easy rapport with customers, because I have an industry background, because, so break it down. What's good about you? And it doesn't even have to be directly related to this pre-sales or pre-sales management role. What's good about you? Preferably in the business world, but it doesn't matter. I will always put down that I am good with horse behavior. Because then when I break it down further, why am I? So, you know, not a lot of horse behavior happens in pre-sales, but still it was good. What brings you joy? And certainly what brings you joy in the job? I love being at the front of the room. Some people don't. I love when I see a person say, oh my goodness, I see how that works. Or, you know, they feel like they were helped. But there are other things too. Do you like to help people? Do you like to speak? Do you prefer, though, or do I prefer, I love when I'm doing an RFP and I'm sitting quietly in my office and I gather all this information. I love doing research. So put it all down. And then the profit is, where can I make some money at this? And what you'll end up with in the profit, when you hone in on the value, where it overlaps with joy, and where can I make some profit? Maybe it's a consulting firm, not a software company. You'll end up with a list of targeted companies or industries to go after. So I've always advised that to myself and to others, for when you're thinking, I would like to make some kind of change or make sure I'm going in the right direction. So that's just my take on that. Any comments, anything else that people want to talk about in the career world? We still have lots of time, but we're not getting very many questions. I'll just ask, is anybody awake? Everybody say yes who is still awake out there. Or if you don't have a question, some people are some people are awake. That's good. Any particular topics that you were hoping to talk about today that we haven't touched on? Oh my goodness, all kinds of people are awake. So what kinds of things are you thinking about? What's life like in your company? And we don't have to use your name. Put it in the chat to me only, and I can then send it out. If you don't want to say, I'm working in a terrible company, how do I get out of here? Don't send that to everybody. Just send that to me, and we can do that separately.
We have a question. Uncle Andy has asked, who is actually hiring pre-sales right now? Well, so, you know, I can tell you who is hiring among our client base, but our client base is a tiny, tiny fraction of a percentage of all the companies out there. Right now, none of our clients are hiring any pre-sales people. They're talking about once they get a sales leader in place, they're going to hire a person for pre-sales. That's one that we looked at, but you know, again, we are, you know, if you want to get a better idea, and even this is not really accurate, is, you know, go to your website. Well, go to Monster, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, all of them, and just see. Reality is that today, many of those companies are just leaving the ads up, with, even if they're not hiring. So that's not going to give you a really great. It's going to give you it's not going to give you a really accurate representation because many of those roles may have been posted in February and March, or they've already committed to so many hiring roles. So for example, with LinkedIn, you pay so much for a job slot, whether, you get unlimited number of roles you can put into that job slot, and you have it for 12 months. Well, okay, so if companies have it, they're going to use it, because otherwise it's just, lost money. Go to companies' websites. But again, you're not really, they may just have a role on there. If they're going to be, candid with you, you could reach out to every one of them and talk to the person responsible for that role, or, whether it's the hiring manager or whether who's ever posted, and just say, is this actually open today? Are you hiring for this today? And then you'll get some idea. In general, overall, like I said, what we've seen is probably 80% of companies put a pause. And that would be for all roles, except like really, really key strategic roles that it's a critical investment to the company's future, as opposed to something that they need today. Something they need today, they probably can figure out how to do it with the people they've got, just move things around. But if it's, setting the company up for success, 12 months, 18 months from now, that's something that they're still absolutely hiring for today.
Okay, Martyn, I have a question that was asked to me privately. Okay. So one of them is working at a company that recently laid off a lot of people. So although she's okay, obviously anxious, and that's what I see all the time. Okay, it's either because other people have been laid off, or I used to do a demo a day and now I'm doing one demo a week. So I'm okay for now, but I don't know if I'm going to be. What's an appropriate way to put the feelers out for new opportunities without sending the signal, I'm ready to move right now? And that's a fear we all have. I'm going to start looking for a job and my boss is going to find out. Is there a way to handle that?
Well, how we identify people on our end is we go to LinkedIn and see who's selected the box open for opportunities. Mm-hmm. And that's really who the first people that our recruiters reach out to. I don't think that's visible. It's not visible. And, if your boss is going to buy a subscription of Recruiter and do the exact same thing, well, that could happen. But, you could always say, oh, I left that on from like a long time ago, or, oh, I always have that. I'm doing market research for you. I want to find out which of our competitors are hiring. You could always spin that. And if you're there now, it's because they value you. And so you would have to do something a lot more egregious than, be open to a conversation with a recruiter for them to take that harsh a measure, because high likelihood your boss is also talking to recruiters.
But I think that's good to know, that you can put that recruiters look for open for opportunities, and that it's a private switch that gets turned on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
People don't have to know that. But that is a scary thing. I know when I was more in the corporate world, I used to wonder about that too. If you want to move, how do you do it? And the truth is, you can't go to an open-minded, wonderful boss and say, I'm thinking about moving on. I like it here, but I just want to let you know that you'll see my resume out there. Most of them say, yeah, right, well, you can go now. Or at least we worry that they will. So, and what about contacting recruiters? If we ask you to be discreet, will you?
Oh, well, recruiters are not a, single group of people, all shapes and sizes. Some are, less concerned about the professionalism, about confidentiality, and others that's absolutely paramount. So, we're very, very focused on confidentiality. And in fact, that's one of the benefits about working with us, is that we can help you explore opportunities, and nobody's going to know who you are until you choose to let us advise the organization that you're interested in making a change. So, but, you've got to be really careful in who you select to work with. And, you want to establish some ground rules with them, right out the gate, right? Which is, if you're not going to represent me to a company until you've contacted me and told me about the company and the opportunity, and I've given you permission to represent me there. Because what some recruiters will do is get your resume and go, oh, great, I have a person, I can market them all over and I can try and get orders. Especially at a time like now where orders are scarce, and they may be they may not be as conscientious about not sharing who you are, because they may think, oh, if I say I got a pre-sales guy out of SAP, I'm going to get the attention of that potential hiring manager more so than if I say I've got a pre-sales person from an ERP company. That may not have the same cachet. So it's just establishing expectations and ground rules for how you're going to work together. And and then how that conversation goes will give you an idea of, do they have your best interests at heart, and are they, going to behave in a really confidential, professional manner.
And Martyn, I think you said something that would trigger me to think something. It isn't just say, please keep it confidential. As you talk, it occurs to me that we should talk to the recruiter about, how are you going to do this, so we understand it. What will you say about me? Because sometimes what you say, because you mentioned I have a great person who knows public sector and SAP in Toronto. Well, they're going to know who it is, or at least they're going to know a group of 6. Let's pick from them.
That's right.
So I guess we need to, when we're talking to the recruiter, don't just say, I'd like it to be confidential, but discuss with you what that means and how I'm going to be described. Is that true?
Yes, yes. So.
Okay, I have a couple of other things. I think here one is just a comment, and the other one is a question. So he was looking for a role, completed a long process, 6 interviews, 2 tests, and a presentation. That sounds like trying to get a job with me. Then I used to require all of them. Well, I didn't require a test. And then COVID hit. Now he's still talking to 2 other companies. They're on hold, but they hope to rehire by the end of May. Are you hearing any timelines on people who are on hold and when they think they will start again?
No. No.
Nope.
I mean, nobody knows, right? I mean, really, does anybody 100% know? No. But so there's a number of factors working in that. One is that organization wants you to know that they're still interested in you. So they want to keep you warm, as, we'll have employers say, oh, keep them warm, which may be the case in this. And they're being optimistic, and because they want their business to move forward. Hiring really is a reflection of growth, and so if a company is growing, then you want to be hiring key roles. So they're optimistic, and they're hoping that it's going to be May, right, or June. But the reality is there are so many factors at work on that, which is, what's the business like? What about their customers? I mean, that's really what I end up talking. When I'm having conversations with organizations. So I sent an email today to a person I've done a lot of work with, and I said, hope you're doing well. Hope your customers still have budget and are focused on innovation to keep your team busy. And he said, we're doing everything we can. We got our heads down moving forward. And that's really where everybody's at, because we're all reliant on, we don't pull money out of the air. We only do well if organizations are growing and looking to hire people. They only do well if their customers are looking to innovate and spend money on the products that they're selling. And so it's this long trickle down, and really nobody knows 100%. So, you take everything with okay, well, that's what they would like to have happen. Stay in touch. Don't be too much of a pest. And, they'll know that you're highly motivated and interested. And, when things open up, because things will change, just nobody can predict exactly when, they'll know that you were the one that, was demonstrating initiative and was really keen to stay connected with them.
Yeah, Martyn, I'd like to just comment on that, a couple of things. One is staying in touch. Sometimes we worry that if we stay in touch, we will seem that we're desperate for the job. And sometimes that's because we are, who knows? Right now is a great time, though, because it's not a great time in general, but it's a great time not to worry about that, because it is so easy to say, with all that's going on, I'm not going anywhere, I just want to see how you're doing. So it's like you can feel more confident about doing it. Sure. I also have someone in my family who is currently, nothing to do with the pandemic, but the concept of staying in touch and also taking a chance. And I have one more private thing that I'm going, before we stop, I want to go over, but sure. Also about taking a chance. So the person in my family is in kind of a niche. He is a software developer, but for video games. There aren't all that many jobs out there for that. So two things. One is he applied for a job that he knew was too senior for him. He was just out of school. So he applied for it anyway. And sure enough, they wrote back and said, we don't feel you're eligible for this job, but would you consider more of an entry level? And of course he said, yes, I wish you would. But they ended up not having a job. They didn't hire anybody. Their principals, the people who give them money, weren't ready to do any hiring. Now, when I was talking to him, I was saying, stay in touch. Well, it's hard. You feel silly staying in touch. But finally, I convinced him to stay in touch. And lo and behold, he sent an email just saying, hi, what's going on, you know. And he had another job, so he could refer to that, and that made him feel more secure, I think. What's going on? Love your company. Let me know when things change. Well, he got a phone call the next day saying, actually, things have changed. And this was December. Could you start in February? It took like one meeting in between. So the staying in touch and the applying for jobs that you know you're not 100% qualified for. You have a comment on that? It's a slightly higher level than I know they're going to hire me for. Should I waste my time applying for those, Martyn?
Well, you know, good for your family member there for having initiative and taking risk and being courageous, really. And looks like it paid off.
Oh, it did.
Yeah. So, you know, as business development people in the world of recruiting, calling companies on a regular basis to finding out what their growth plans are, and oftentimes being told, listen, we're busy, nothing's going on. I told you that last week. Why are you calling me again? Not that we do that. So we're staying in touch as well. So, you know, it's a fine line between, you know, with the joke that we use of the three levels. There's being professionally persistent, then there's stalker, then there's restraining order, okay? So, you know, you want to stay away from the latter two. But how do you differentiate yourself is it's your nephew, I think, right? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Your nephew?
Yeah.
All right, so what did he do? Well, he wrote something that was meaningful. Hi, I love your company. So if you're going to stay in touch, you have to bring something of value or interest to the reader. Hey, just saw on your website that you've announced that you landed this new company. Wow, that's great. How did you do that? Mm-hmm. Oh, you're launching a new product. Wow, yeah, you know, I'm really interested in that market too. You know, I've got a lot of passion for that. How's that working? You know, find something. I mean, you know, between Google and between what they put on the website and blog posts, there's going to be something that you can include in an email that will demonstrate that you're actually paying attention, that you're, you know, doing your homework, that you are interested, and that it's going to resonate with the reader and differentiate you from other people who just say, hey, is that job open yet? Right? And, you know, what your nephew did is what, like nobody, so one of the things that we have to always keep in mind is nobody has complete information. So you call up a company, oh no, we're not hiring right now. Okay, well, you know, you call them up a week later. Actually, we just had someone resign on Friday. I can't believe it. Your call's like, who knew? Now, have they advertised that that person resigned? Does anybody except that person's circle of friends know, and the people that work there? Absolutely not. So you're taking a risk. But what you're doing is you're being opportunistic, and that's what you want to do. You know, bring a level of to differentiate yourself about that. But know that things can happen without anybody else knowing, and you're the first person there to reach out to them. And all of a sudden, they woke up on they woke up on Monday morning, and the first thing they did, they had an employee come in and resign at 9:01. Oh, their day just got shot. Like now, and you show up at 9:30 going, yeah, I'm still interested in working for you guys, and I saw that you blah, blah, blah. Problem solved. Okay, when can you come in and meet me? That's how this world works.
You know, that's exactly how it sounded when my nephew got that job. It was like it sounded as if he sent that email to them the day they ran into a problem. Because boom, it was like that. Yep. So now this other thing I have, and it's really somebody just wants to have a discussion. What it's about has diversity in pre-sales. I understand the need to communicate clearly, but a foreign accent is a showstopper for many employers. What are your thoughts? So I would like Martyn to give his thoughts as the recruiting guru. Anybody on the call who is in pre-sales management or anything like that, also maybe your thoughts on that. How important is it if you have a foreign accent and you're looking for a pre-sales role?
So there are multiple aspects to that, and it really comes across like your presentation skills. If you're so hard to understand that people are regularly saying, sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry, could you spell that? Sorry, I didn't understand. You're going to have a real challenge. But if you could be understood, then really what it comes down to is, how do you present? Are you that boring, monotone person that never speaks in anything like this? Okay, well, you're probably not getting hired either. But if you're a person that modulates your tone and brings people in and smiles and gets people enthusiastic, okay, then you know what? That becomes far, far less of an issue, because what do people want? You hired lots of people for this. What do you want? Somebody who's enthusiastic and passionate and can get excitement. Okay? Other stuff you can help with and you can coach around, but if they don't bring their game on every time that they're talking to customers and have customers want to talk to them, like the biggest compliment you can get, and whether it's pre-sales or implementation, is when the customer goes, hey, listen, we're interested in doing something. Can you send that person around again? Oh, okay. So if they were so engaging to that customer the first time around that the customer is requesting to have them as part of the process now, okay, well then you've achieved what you need to do.
Okay, so now sometimes in my experience, an accent that can be so different to the people that you're dealing with that it might be worth practicing certain things. And it can be any accent. I personally am terrible at understanding accents. About 102 years ago, approximately, when I was taking my MBA in the summer, I had a summer job, and I worked at the airport here in Halifax. Actually, in Halifax, there's always people flying on the 10:30 flight to Europe. Very busy. And so I'm checking people in. Somebody came up, a woman came up, she was trying to check in, and she was talking in some language, and I said to her, can you tell me what language you're speaking? We have several different language speaking people here, and I can get someone to help you. And her friend moved forward and said, she's speaking English, she's Scottish. And I had no clue. I was ridiculed for that for the rest of my summer with Air Canada.
You should be. Now, what's your last name, Aileen?
Exactly. I'm from Nova Scotia. My last name is Celtic, and my grandmother speaks Gaelic, and I couldn't understand her. Now, I'm going to tell, but I do think it's worth working on. I think your engagement is important, as Martyn says. I do think an accent matters, and anybody who says otherwise, please go right ahead, and I see that there's at least some in there. But here's another story that it has an off-color element to it. But so I had somebody reporting to me from Quebec, and he barely had any kind of accent, even though French was his first language, and he was doing all the English language demos and stuff. But he was telling me that he went to a demo and he was talking about reporting, showing all the dashboards and the reports and all that. And he said the audience started to just sort of smile, and then they started to giggle, and then they outright guffawed. They laughed. And he just looked at them, and finally one of them said, excuse me, Francois, but are you talking about statistical reports? And he said, yes. And they said, well, you've been calling them testicular reports. And I'm sorry, and we're supposed to be grown-ups, but we laugh every time you say it. So he told me about that, and he and I found that too funny for words, but then we dealt with words. And so I said, okay, why don't we, as part of our team member coach kind of relationship, why don't we take a word a day that you struggle with, or that I have seen you struggle with in a demo, and you just fix that word, just for when you're doing English demos, and I'm too delighted for words that you're French speaking, what would we do without you? But let's not have any more testicular reports. And so he did, he worked on that. And so if it's a small accent, it won't matter. what he did was, he was a great SE, he built great rapport, and instead of just shaking their heads, they loved him even more for it. So, but I do think if your accent is so strong, the audience you're talking to doesn't understand you, you need to get some help somewhere with it. Yeah. So somebody said, oh, this was to everyone. So Andy is saying, I recommend everyone join the local Toastmaster to improve their skills. That's true. Oh, somebody else says, funny story, the Scottish story, I guess, because they're from Cape Breton as well. Many thanks for your insights. I guess they're leaving. And that's about it for anything else. No other questions or comments. Let me see. So we're just about to close up. And I would like to close with one comment that we've been talking about. If we're worried about our jobs, we have to look valuable at work. And if you're worried about your job, it's not unreasonable. Times are really troubled right now. And I'll tell you something that I have seen that is not helping anybody who does this. We are in pre-sales in a support role. We support the sales process and we have to act like that. But I think we really need to balance that with also owning our job. Do you want to do discovery? Then say you want to do discovery and why, and then use it well. Don't wait for the AE to schedule a strategy call if they haven't done it. Ask for one. And don't kick and scream and say, who do you think you are? If they say no, they own the deal. So it is a balancing act to have strength in a support role. And if you want to be perceived as someone they want to keep on board or to promote, I feel you really need to do that balancing act. So we have come to the end of our time together. Zoom, other than me being silent for a few moments at the beginning, has served us well. And so I'd like to say thank you to Martyn. I really appreciate you taking the time, Martyn. If anybody has any other questions they'd like to send, feel free to send them on, and Martyn and I will address them separately. So I'll end the meeting now. Thanks so much, Martyn.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. Okay.
Right. Bye-bye.
Yes. Give me a call about that ingredient. I think we can figure something out, okay?
Okay, it was black beans. All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.